in your experience with the NFT space, from a legal standpoint, what are some hurdles that some projects or some creators kind of need to be careful of, right? Because I don't think any of that gets talked about. And it's interesting to hear from, because like you can ask a lawyer who I guess practices law, but probably not really immersed in the NFT space. So you being someone who's very much in the NFT space, but also practices, what are some hurdles that NFT projects need to be aware of or need to look out for?
Well, I guess I would start my answer by saying this is a lot of speculation. And I don't mean that in the financial sense of the word. I mean speculation in the sense of the legal landscape surrounding NFTs is very, very formative. Okay? Um, so, we're flying to an alien planet. We've landed the spaceship. And as we're getting out the doors, you're asking me, what are the concerns? What are the main safety precautions we should take on this new alien planet? And the answer is like, be careful, I guess, right? It's so we could talk about the dangers of other planets we've visited and the sorts of problems we've seen before. But this one's new. This one is new in a lot of very real senses. Now, there's some obvious issues coming. Very, very obvious issues coming down the pipes. And I think some people feel like these aren't concerns because it hasn't happened yet. And in NFT land, a day is a year, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the gears of law grind slowly, and it will come for you too, right? So obviously, taxes are something for every project to think about. Okay, IRS isn't going to go away or ignore the NFT space. So point one, pay your taxes, right? It matters. This is, I'm not saying that from an ethical standpoint. I'm saying that from a practical standpoint. They have 7 years in the United States, for example. It's long statutes of limitation. There's plenty of time for them to catch up with people who have not been paying taxes. And so do yourself a favor. Assume that the IRS, which is, by the way, the largest investor in crypto analytics on the planet right now.
Wow. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, so assume that they're not doing that for no reason, right? And we've seen, for example, people getting caught. We just saw this week crypto analytics can do some amazing things, even apparently working backwards through different services that attempt to hide the flow of crypto, right?
Yeah.
Apparently, those aren't as secure as we might have thought. So, number one, I guess I would say is I'm not a tax lawyer, by the way. But suffice it to say, I fully believe that the tax man cometh. Okay,
they will get cometh. That's so funny.
Secondly, securities regulation is coming too.
Yeah.
And that's a big one. It's a particularly big one for the NFT space. And I know some people listening to this might immediately react like, we're not a security, okay? Period, right? Damn it. We're so clearly not a security. It's art. How could it be a security? It's art, for Christ's sake, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, good luck. So the problem is, why, and this goes to my earlier point, like, well, it hasn't happened yet, so it's probably not a problem, right? I would not subscribe to that logic, okay? The SEC is definitely more focused on DeFi at the moment, but that's only because, like, you should just look at them as having a lag time behind what happens in the market and when they're ready to bring prosecutions and pick their cases and figure out what they want to do. They have not really targeted the NFT space. And they're getting egged on increasingly by the NFT space.
Yeah.
Just taunted by the NFT space. I'll give you just a hypothetical in your mind if you really, for those who really are thinking like, no, art can't be a security, right? If I were to say I've got a company, I'm going to call it Apple, okay? Just making up a fruit. And I don't want to sell, securities or anything, but what I will sell is pieces of paper that I'm going to call, let's say, like stock certificate, okay? Just a name. And I'm going to give that piece of paper. You can buy one of these pieces of papers. That's not, you don't own my company. It's just art, okay? This is an art that I'm calling a stock certificate. And as a special bonus to people who hold this art, we're going to give you some, some of the share, we'll give you some of the proceeds from the wealth of our company. Like, how far do you think that argument would like, how, that doesn't pass the smell test, right?
It does not.
You get what I'm saying? In other words, don't think you're so clever, okay? That just saying it's art means that you have suddenly trumped like the securities regulation on the planet. It's not going to be so simple. And where you really see this getting egged on is, now I'm not saying projects shouldn't do this, okay? I'm not saying that they shouldn't experiment and innovate and build things, but like the tokenomics of projects are getting increasingly sophisticated and increasingly starting to look like securities, right? So here's some really simple stuff you can do to do yourself a favor, right? Or let me put it this way. Something we do on Punkscape is if you ask a member of our core team, what do you expect the value of the Punkscapes to be in the future? Any form of that question, we give the same answer every time, which is we shrug. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. But do yourself a favor and don't make price predictions. Don't tell people that, don't try to encourage, at least from the project management standpoint, do not make promises about future profitability. Why? Because that's part of the test of whether or not something is a security.
Yeah.
That's not the only factor, but it's certainly one that's one that's entirely within your control. And you don't know the future anyway, so what are you doing making promises about it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So one thing you can do just if you're an NFT project to help protect yourself is the answer should be the same. We as a project do not make price predictions. Period. That's it. That should be your response. We do not guarantee profitability. We do not guarantee blah blah blah. And by the way, it doesn't. I'm using the word guarantee, but that doesn't mean that something that falls short of guarantee wouldn't still satisfy this factor, right?
Yeah.
You really don't want to get into any kind of expectation of profit from the standpoint of the person using it. Now, if your community base is talking about expectation of profit and things like that, that's different. They're allowed to have conversations. But there is a different line from when it's coming from the project itself. And it's a simple one that you can, as a rule, try to protect yourself as a project by not playing directly into that factor. I see it like crazy from projects. I think they're just crazy. They're ultimately the SEC and entities, securities regulations in various countries will be going after NFT projects, I suspect. They will probably not be going after all of them. They will probably target bigger ones. But whatever project you're involved in, you probably hope that it is, by that point, one of the really big ones, right?
Yep.
They will, when going after those projects, they will be looking at what cases can they build? Where do they have a stronger case? And don't do them favors by making these factors simpler. My hope is that some common sense changes to the way we regulate securities happens before this sort of litigation happens. Because I think a lot of the innovation happening with DAOs and with in the NFT space is super interesting, and it would be a real shame if that innovation was, I don't think it will be stopped, but I think it could be really slowed down and interfered with by certain kinds of litigation. And I don't think it's inherent, I love DAOs, okay? So I don't think that there's, the argument for why do we need to stop this, to me, seems awfully thin. And you hear people talk about, well, but crypto is so volatile. It's like, so are stocks. Give me a break. Like, so are a lot of things. Okay, yeah. That's a bad reason. The question is, well, you get what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying. I'm hoping that some changes happen to the law that make this a fluid transition to when there's definitely players that should be prosecuted. There are problems in the space that should be prosecuted. I don't think being a DAO is one of those problems, but I think various forms of fraud that go on are a problem where it would be welcome to have some oversight from governments to help reduce the fraud, to make it a safer place for buyers, that kind of stuff. I don't think all regulation is inherently evil, in other words.